and former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel. Senator, thank you. And Senator Gravel, for those who may not be familiar with your past, 2 terms U.S. Senate from Alaska, you played a role in the fight to cut off money for the Vietnam War. What would be your advice, Senator, for the elected officials on this stage who are at a conflict, opposed to the conflict, but also feel the need to keep on funding the conflict?
Well, first off, understand that this war was lost the day that George Bush invaded Iraq on a fraudulent basis. Understand that. Now, with respect to what's going on in the Congress, I'm really embarrassed. So we passed, and the media is in a frenzy right today with what has been passed. What has been passed? George Bush communicated over a year ago that he would not get out of Iraq until he left office. Do we not believe him? We need to find another way. That's where I really would like to sit down with Pelosi and with Reid, and I would hope the other senators would focus on how do you get out? You pass the law, not a resolution, a law, making it a felony to stay there. And I'll give you the text of it. And if you're worried about filibuster, here's what you do tactically. They can pass it in the House. We got the votes there. In the Senate, let them filibuster it. And let Reid call up at 12 o'clock every day to have a cloture vote and let the American people see clearly who's keeping the war going and who's not. And that's just the beginning of the tactic if they're tough enough to do it.
Senator Gravel, at a forum earlier this year, I want to get this right, you said it doesn't matter whether you are elected president or not, so then why are you here tonight? Shouldn't debates be for candidates who are in the race to win the race?
Ryan, you're right, I made that statement, but that's before I had a chance to stand with them three times. It's like going into the Senate. You know, the first time you get there, you're all excited, my God, how did I ever get here? Then about 6 months later, you say, how the hell did the rest of them get here? And I got to tell you, after standing up with them, some of these people frighten me. They frighten me. When you have mainline candidates that turn around and say that there's nothing off the table with respect to Iran, that's code for using nukes, nuclear devices. I got to tell you, I'm President of the United States. There will be no preemptive wars with nuclear devices. To my mind, it's immoral, and it's been immoral for the last 50 years as part of American foreign policy.
Let's use a little moderator discretion here. Senator Gravel, that's a weighty charge. Who on this stage exactly tonight worries you so much?
Well, I would say the top-tier ones. The top-tier ones. They've made statements. Oh, Joe, I'll include you, too. You have a certain arrogance. You want to tell the Iraqis how to run their country. I got to tell you, we should just plain get out. Just plain get out. It's their country. They're asking us to leave, and we insist on staying there. And why not get out? What harm is it going to do? Oh, you hear the statement, well, my God, these soldiers will have died in vain. The entire deaths of Vietnam died in vain. And they're dying in vain right this very second. And you know what's worse than a soldier dying in vain? Is more soldiers dying in vain. That's what's worse.
Short answer question. One sentence, and I'm going to ask each of you, beginning with Senator Gravel. This is from Paula in Conway, South Carolina. What is the most significant political or professional mistake you have made in the past 4 years? And what, if anything, did you learn from this mistake which makes you a better candidate? And make the sentence no longer than 20 seconds, okay? Senator Gravel.
I've just grown up. I'm the senior statesman on here, and I was beginning to feel like a potted plant standing over here. But let me point out to you, in one sentence, I won't hold their youth and inexperience against them.
Thank you, sir. Representative.
Same question. Other than Iraq, 3 most important enemies to the United States.
We have no important enemies. What we need to do is to begin to deal with the rest of the world as equals, and we don't do that. We spend more as a nation on defense than all the rest of the world put together. Who are we afraid of? Who are you afraid of, Brian? I'm not. And Iraq has never been a threat to us. We invaded them. I mean, it is unbelievable. The military-industrial complex not only controls our government, lock, stock, and barrel, but they control our culture.
Gravel, your 2 terms in the Senate representing Alaska sat on top of course, a huge reserve of oil. With the French system as the model, is the United States, in your view, woefully behind in its use of nuclear energy?
No, not at all. I think there had to be a maturation process, and I'm the one that started the nuclear critique in this country. I'm also the one that denied the boots on the ground for George Bush today when I filibustered at the end of the draft. And I'm also the one that brought about the Alaska pipeline by one vote in the Congress. So when you ask about the energy issues or the other issues, let me just tell you, I want to answer the question on the war and on what's going on. We are mischaracterizing terrorism. Terrorism has been with civilization from the beginning, and it will be there till the end. We're going to be as successful fighting terrorism as we are fighting drugs with the war. It doesn't work. What you have to do is to begin to change the whole foreign policy. The Republicans who are charging Democrats about not going for the defense of this country, my God, this invasion brought about more terrorists. Osama bin Laden must have been rolling in his blankets how happy he was over our invading Iraq.
Time is Senator Gravel. 30 seconds, please.
No, with respect to Iran, we've sanctioned them for 26 years. We scared the bejesus out of them when the president says they're evil. Well, you know something? These things don't work. They don't work. We need to recognize them. And you know something? Who is the greatest violator of the Non-Proliferation Treaty? The United States of America. We signed a pledge that we would begin to disarm, and we're not doing it. We're expanding our nukes. Who the hell are we going to nuke?
Senator,
tell me, Barack, who are you want to nuke?
I'm not planning to nuke anybody right now, Mike. I promise you.
Good. We're safe then for a while.
Senators both, thank you.
4 of these people here will say that it's George Bush's war. It was facilitated by the Democrats. They brought the resolution up. One of them co-authored it here, standing here. And so it's George Bush's war, but it's a Democrats' war also. Now, do you want to end it? You're concerned about what's going to happen after we withdraw? Well, remember Vietnam. All the dominoes are going to fall. Southeast Asia is going to go communist. Well, how do we know what will happen? I do know this, that the insurgency is successful because the population sustains that insurgency. Period.
Senator Gravel, do you think someone who voted to authorize the president to go to war should be president of the United States?
Not at all, because it's a moral criteria. And there's information coming out, Senator Durbin, Mr. Strum in his book, that really points out that these people knew that there was 2 sets of intelligence going on at the same time. And they made a political decision to vote the way they voted. A political decision that cost, stop and think, we have killed more Americans than was done on the 11th of September. More Americans died because of their decision. That disqualifies them for president. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that they don't have moral judgment. And that's very important when you become president.
Senator Gravel?
Yeah, well, I join him on the carbon tax, and of course that will raise the price of gasoline. Let's be candid about that. There's nothing I would do as president to lower the price of gasoline right now. We Americans have to grow up. If we want to get off of the dependency in the Middle East, we have to own up to the problem. These things cost money. They're controlling our society. And the sooner we stop fighting these wars, here, stop and think. You only see $3. Just watch those wheels turn. There's another $4, which is what we spend to keep American troops around the world to keep the price. So you're paying more than $7 a gallon. You just don't know it.
Is it time to do away with these earmarks?
Totally. Totally. It's abominable. And the only way you're going to get rid of it is to give the president the line item veto. And of course, they're not going to give the president line item veto. What we need to do is change the entire tax structure. I want to point out that the Comptroller General of the United States invited all the presidential candidates to come in for a briefing. I went in for a briefing. He said there was only 2 other people that came in for a briefing. What the briefing he told us is that we have a fiscal gap on the order of $50 trillion. And you're hearing all this money is going to be spent to do all these great things? My God, don't believe a word of it. Follow the money. You can't get all this money coming at you, millions of dollars from all the special interests, and think that they're now going to deal with solving the problems with special interests. Won't happen. First off, let me thank the organizers. This is the fairest debate or forum that we've had thus far this year. Let me add that Racism was here with us at the beginning of this country. It was here in the last century, and it's going to be with us in the 21st century. And one of the areas that touches me the most and enrages me the most is our war on drugs that this country has been putting forth for the last generation. In 1972, we had 179,000 human beings in jail in this country. Today, it's 2.3 million, and 70% of them are black African Americans. And I hope my colleagues will join me in standing up and saying, like FDR did with Prohibition, we'll do away with that. And FDR did it. And if I'm president, I'll do away with the war on drugs, which does nothing but savage our inner cities and put our children at risk. There's no reason for this. There's not an American that doesn't understand the culture and the understanding that Prohibition was a failure. And so we repeat it again, like we repeated Iraq after we had the failure of Vietnam. When will we learn? When will we learn that the issue of drugs is a public health issue? Addiction is a public health issue, not a criminal issue where we throw people in jail and criminalize them to no advancement to the people. And if there's one group of people in this country that needs to face up to that problem, and we have to face up to it, and that is the African American community. Stop and think what the opportunity cost. Now, you have heard these nostrums before. I've been watching your heads. You're nodding on all the programs. You've heard it 10 years ago. You've heard it 20 years ago. Why doesn't it change? The Democratic Party hasn't done appreciably better than the Republican Party in solving these problems. It has to be solved by the people, not by your leaders. Stop and think. When he's talking about the money we're squandering, 21 million Americans could have a 4-year college scholarship for the money we've squandered in Iraq. 7.6 million teachers could have been hired last year if we weren't squandering this money. Now, how do you think we got into this problem? The people on this stage, like the rest of us, are all guilty, and very guilty, and we should recognize that because there is linkage.
Senator Dodd? Yeah. Time is up. I'm sorry. Senator Dodd?
I touched on it earlier. The scourge of our present society, particularly in the African American community, is the war on drugs. I'll repeat it again as a challenge to my colleagues on this stage that they really want to do something about the inner cities, if they really want to do something about what's happening to the health of the African American community, it's time to end this war. There's no reason to continue it in the slightest. All it does is create criminals out of people who are not criminals. Education, yes. Healthcare, yes. But understand that the healthcare that we're talking about, by and large, is going backwards. Going backwards. We're subsidizing the insurance companies, and all the plans that I've heard of except Dennis's is a continued subsidization of the insurance companies. Please, put pressure on these people to step up and end this war on drugs, which is ravaging your community.
Senator, thank you. Senator Dodd?
I want to say that none of you are going to live in your lifetime to see our system of taxation changed based upon what you've heard here. I was 8 years on the Finance Committee. None of them have served on that committee, and I'll tell you the code stands that high, and there's not a human being alive that understands it. And it's with Democrats, with Republicans, they take care of the people. You think it's an accident that all of a sudden we wake up that the wealthy aren't paying a fair share? The only way they're going to pay a fair share is wipe out the income tax. It is corrupt. It's corrupting our society. And begin to put in place a tax that everybody will know what everybody's paying. And that's a retail sales tax. And you can make it as progressive as you want. Keep in mind, a tax where everybody will know what everybody is paying.
Senator Gravel,
you won't see it with this.
Senator Dodd?
Thank you.
Is it a surprise to anybody in this room that if you don't have any money, you don't get any justice? Is that a surprise to you all? My gracious. The only way you're going to get justice is to turn around and empower yourselves to become lawmakers so you can change the system. And there's no thought of really changing the system today. It's politics as usual.
Senator Dodd.
Yes, and just keep in mind, if we weren't squandering our treasure on this terrible war that we didn't have to start, we would have 4 million housing units available, and a good portion of them could go to Katrina residents. Outsourcing is not the problem. What is the problem is our trade agreements that we have that benefit the management and, of course, the shareholders, and have neglected on either side of the issue, whether it's in Mexico or in other countries or the United States. That's the problem that must be addressed. So no, it's not outsourcing, but I would add to it, it's the way all these people want to finance health care on the backs of businesses that make them uncompetitive in the world. That's the part of the problem, and our system of taxation is also part of the problem because it makes us uncompetitive in the world.
Senator Gravel, thank you.
This is a special edition of This Week, the Iowa Debates, co-sponsored with our Des Moines affiliate, ABC5, WOI-TV, and the Iowa Democratic Party. This morning, the Democratic presidential candidates. Live from Sheslow Auditorium on the campus of Drake University, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of This Week. We're back here at Drake University in Iowa for the first Democratic presidential debate in Iowa. It's been sanctioned by the Democratic National Committee. All of our guests here have been invited by the Iowa Democratic Party, and all 8 Democratic candidates are here.
In the last 25 years, this nation has continued to expand its nuclear capability. I would say that essentially they're all wrong on this. They're sort of leading up. The administration is cooking the books, the intelligence on Iran. And we're playing into this, and I'm very concerned. I would hope that Congress would pass a resolution saying, no, under no circumstances do you invade Iran. Stop and think, what have they done to us? They're giving us intelligence saying that they're destroying our troops. Well, what about our trying to destabilize their government, which we've been doing for the last 25 years? We destroyed their democracy, and now we're looking at them as an excuse to expand the war, which is the plan the neocons had back in 1997. And so when Democrats buy into the problem of Iran, they just help Vice President Cheney, who should be committed with his recent statement. Why do we think that we can rule that country? This is American imperialism you're hearing up here. And that hasn't worked, and it will never work. Who are we to tell the Iraqis? We're trying to make them the fall guy, not our stupid mistakes. Oh, it's the Iraqis won't stand up. Tell you what, pull everybody out and turn to the Iranians. Who helped us defeat the Taliban initially? It was the Iranians. So if we don't bring the Iranians to help us, or the Syrians, or the Saudi Arabia, of course it's going to be a disaster. They have more at stake in that area of the world than we do.
So, Senator,
all we got to do
pull out.
is
Senator
pull
Edwards.
back and use diplomacy.
Thank you. Email question from Seth Ford of South Jordan, Utah. And he said, my question is to understand each candidate's view of a personal God. Do they believe that through the power of prayer, disasters like Hurricane Katrina or the Minnesota bridge collapse could have been prevented or lessened? I'd like each of you to answer it.
What I believe in is love. And love implements courage. And courage permits us all to apply the virtues that are important in life. And so you can pray. I was always persuaded by or struck by the fact that many people who pray are the ones who want to go to war, who want to kill fellow human beings. That disturbs me. I think what we need is more love between one human being and another human being, and then we'll find the courage to dispel many of the problems we have in governance. The answer to governance is not up here in the dais. The answer is with the American people and the people of Iowa. That's where the answer is, and I have a proposal, and it's the only one that talks of change. The change is to empower the American people with a national initiative, and my colleagues, with all due respect, don't even understand the principle of the people having the power.
Mr. question is for all the candidates. Unlike many others, I think that candidates may tell the truth, just not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. For example, when advocating position or action, candidates downplay or simply ignore the likely negative side effects. Can you name a major issue where you didn't tell the whole truth and describe what you left out?
Senator Gravel?
Yes, I can tell one issue that they're not living up to. My colleagues have all said that they want public financing.
How about you,
The
Senator?
No, I'm part of it, and I'm telling the truth. They can do this right now. There's nothing, and I ask for a pledge from all of them to immediately obey the law we have on the books to use public financing. They can store their money, their millions, for the general election. But right now, in the primaries, why can't they say what they promised and they said therefore? Otherwise, it means there's a little hypocrisy abroad here.
No one on the stage is for merit pay for teachers specifically.
I am.
You are? Okay, thank you.
And George,
Can I respond? Can I expand upon that since I've said I'm for merit pay?
Go for it.
Don't leave me hanging.
Okay.
No, stop and think. They're all talking business as usual, politics as usual. This country, we're so proud. We think we're number one. He just gave you a statistic of how bad we are. I'll give you another one. We're 46th in literacy in the world. 30% of our children do not graduate from high school. What does that mean for the future of this country? And all we get are the same old nostrums that we need competition in education. Stop and think. Here. Spain, Norway, Finland, these countries, they're not the superpower of the world, but they pay for their children from childhood to PhD levels. Why can't Americans put education as the top priority? And you can't do it when you want to expand, as he wants to expand, 100,000 more troops.
This is basically a yes-no question. We've seen all this turmoil in the markets over the last couple of weeks caused by the credit crunch and the crisis in the mortgage markets. We saw on Friday the Federal Reserve lowered the discount rate for banks. Should they lower rates for everyone else, yes or no?
Well, I would say that there's no answer to that question. Just follow the money of the people on this dais and you'll see a response.
Final question, about 30 seconds each, please. You know, presidential biographers are always looking at the turning point in a life, the moment where an ordinary person went on the path to the presidency, the decisive moment.
The moment in my life came with the insightfulness of realizing that human governance is extremely complex and that representative government is broken. And there's only two venues for change. One is the government, where the problem lies, or the people. And so the people must be equipped as lawmakers, the central power of government, in order to make decisions on all the policy issues that affect their lives. Working in partnership with elected government is a win-win. The people make the policy decisions, and we then would make the day-to-day operation of government work better.
The Democratic presidential candidates debate. From Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, here is Tim Russert.
Good evening and welcome. We have some big issues to talk about tonight, so let's start right now. Senator Gravel, I've listened to you very carefully in this campaign. You were in the Senate.
You're one of the few that has.
You were in the Senate, and you take credit for stopping the draft. If you were a senator right now, what advice would you give your colleagues still in Congress about how they can stop the war, even though they don't have enough votes to stop a debate or to override a veto? What should they do?
Well, the first thing, you stop the debate by voting every single day on cloture. Every day. 20 days, and you'll overcome cloture. The president vetoes the law. It comes back to the Congress, and in the House at noon, every single day, you vote to override the president's veto. And in 40 days, the American people will have weighed in, put the pressure on those. You tell me that the votes aren't there, you go get them by the scruff of the neck. That's what you do. You make them vote.
Senator, are you suggesting that these candidates suspend their campaigns, go back to Washington, and for 40 consecutive days vote on the war?
If it stops the killing, my God, yes, do it.
Tim.
And Tim, you're really missing something. This is fantasy land. We're talking about ending the war. My God, we're just starting a war right today. There was a vote in the Senate today. Joe Lieberman, who authored the Iraq resolution, has authored another resolution, and it is essentially a fig leaf to let George Bush go to war with Iran. And I want to congratulate Biden for voting against it, Dodd for voting against it, and I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it. You're not going to get another shot at this, because what's happened, if this war ensues, we invade, and they're looking for an excuse to do it. And Obama was not even there to vote.
Dozens of cities around the country, including several right here in New England, have been designated as sanctuary cities. These are communities that provide a safe haven for illegal immigrants, where police are told not to involve themselves in immigration matters. Would you allow these cities to ignore the federal law regarding the reporting of illegal immigrants and, in fact, provide sanctuary to these immigrants?
This whole nation should be a sanctuary for the war, for the world, and bring the people in. What's going on? We're in fantasy land. We're talking about a problem. We're scapegoating the Latinos of our society because we as a society are failing in education, we're failing in health care, we're failing in our crumbling infrastructure, and we're failing by invading countries and spending our treasure. That's what's wrong, and so I'm ashamed as an American to be building a fence on our southern border. That's not the America that I fought for.
Thank you, Senator Gravel.
Susan Remickle of Canaan, New Hampshire, the mother of 2 young adult sons, believes that the legal drinking age of 21 is counterproductive and unrealistic, especially, she says, because we trust people of this age to make life and death decisions in our military. Would you, as president, remove the requirement that a state have a legal drinking age of 21 in order to receive federal highway funds, thereby returning the drinking age back to the states?
I think we should lower it to anybody that can go fight and die for this country should be able to drink.
Would anyone here raise the gasoline tax in order to wean America off of Middle Eastern oil?
Well, first off, let me qualify it. I would ask the Congress, they won't do it, but then I would empower the American people to do it, and that is to put a carbon tax on. If we don't do something drastic, and we can get off of gasoline in 5 years, and we can get off of carbon in 10 years, all we got to do is want to do it, and to put a tax on gasoline permits politicians and bureaucrats to play favorites. You do it right at the lump of coal, and you do it at the gas, and you do it at the oil, and then let it filter through the system properly.
Nuclear power.
Not at all. The solution obviously is wind power. If we manufactured 5 million of these 2.5 meg windmills across the country, we could electrify the entire nation. The entire nation. I'm talking about a transportation system. Why don't we do that? We know this is technology off the shelf. That's why I kept saying we can get off of gasoline in 5 years. We can get off of carbon in 10 years. All we got to want is to do it, and it will take the American people, because they can't get that through the Congress.
Senator Gravel.
Most important thing in life is love. That's what empowers courage, and courage implements the rest of our virtues. This is Mike Gravel. Whether you're interested or just curious to know more about me, go to my website, join me, enter your email, send me some questions, learn more about my campaign. Please do it now. Be a part of our ripple effect.